Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor. This is video number 2 in the basic silicone mold series for cast and working models. First video went over how to get this clay maquette of St. Francis with a Dove properly released with naphtha soap, just laundry soap, and you can see it's pretty good. Don't have any amount of build, all the cracks and crevices. This is the next morning, it's dried up. So what I'm going to do is we're going to use some regular GE silicone. Show it one more time. Clear silicone number 1, 100% silicone. Other products may work just as well. I don't know. This is what Ryan taught us to use, how they did it, and they said they'd tried a bunch of other products and they were most satisfied with these, so I go with what works. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, just not enough time. This is a way to do a silicone mold that's convenient because you can get this silicone just about anywhere. What we're going to do is we're going to squirt a bead of this silicone right onto this released clay, this Roma plastilina, and we're going to manipulate it just with a finger to spread it and make it thin in order to keep it from sticking on our hands or anything it touches, because this is really tenacious stuff. It gets on everything. If you wear your favorite t-shirt, favorite pants, whatever, you're probably going to have silicone on them, so just be ready. We're just going to use laundry, just regular dish detergent, and a little bit of water. I've got a little bit of water. I like to use a disposable pan because the silicone will get on it somewhat. I like to use a horizontal pan so that it's not tall and vertical. It's less likely to tip over. Quick little tips. I tried the different plugs and everything for trying to save silicone. Doesn't always work. What I usually end up doing is I save the offcut. And if I got to plug this, I'll just jam that bugger back in there really tight, and it works as well as anything. So I'm already got it. I'm already going to throw it out anyway. So, but we'll spread a very thin coat. The goal with this is to spread this on thin. If you spread this on thick, and when I say thick, I mean anything more than 1/8 of an inch, even 1/4 inch can take a long time to cure. This cures from the outside. It's got to have some humidity, and if it's very thick, if you put this on, like if I went here and filled this level and I had a 1/2 inch deep spot, I could have raw uncured silicone in there for months. So you won't save any time. You want to build it thick enough that it doesn't tear when you pull it off, but you want to spread it on thin enough that it cures and goes off quick. So what we'll have to do is this is a good project to do when you've got other things planned or that you can do, because we're going to spread a thin coat on this, the entire first coat. I'm going to try to keep it well under 1/4 inch, make it thin so it'll go off and cure and harden up quickly, and hopefully later this afternoon, I mean it's 10 o'clock in the morning now, hopefully later this afternoon I can put on at least one more coat depending on how well it cures, and we'll have to do this 2 or 3 times, and then we'll go back in and work on to make sure the draft is resolved. Have to go in and put foam so that everything releases well when we pull the mother off, because all of these undercuts under here all have to be built so there's no draft, or the plaster mother or support that we'll put over the silicone mold will actually come out, and we'll have some keys in the silicone mold to help hold it in the mother. We'll put some blocks in to help build it around there. So once again, sit back, relax, see if you can learn something. We'll try to get some good video of applying this silicone and make a nice mold. Okay, we're going to start this. I'm going to just put some soap here in the water. You don't have to put tons of soap in. You really don't have to put much of any soap in. But mix it up good. The soapy water will really help keep it off your hands. And you want to try to get, I like to get the side of my hand, not just my fingers. Gone ahead and poke this. I'll put some tape on here to release everything. And I'll try to get my video expert here to get in real close while I do this. We're going to lay on a bead to get started. And then release your pressure so that it doesn't keep squirting out. And then we're going to work this in and try to get a really nice, even, very thin coat. And it can be paper thin. It doesn't have to have any thickness. I've got some older silicone that's left over from previous projects. I like to do my first coat with known, brand new, fantastic, right fresh from the store silicone, so that I know it's going to be good. Because if I've got to scrape something off because it doesn't cure properly, if it's on top of good silicone, it'll come right off without a lot of trouble. Now press this on nice and thin. You can see that it is not sticking to the clay right now. What's going to happen when I put the next bead on is this line around here is going to leave a little wetness depending on how well I join it. And that's what I was talking about with the quality of your mold. If your fingers run out of soap, they will start to stick and it'll lift. You'll notice it. But if your silicone's lifting off the clay good, that's ideal. And put your end where it'll drip, and hopefully drip over your model so you won't waste any silicone. You don't want extra water on there to inhibit the silicone. But you just kind of work it on. Like I mentioned, be careful because you'll get it stuck on the side of your hand, and then you'll brush your shirt or your hair, and then you'll have silicone there, and it's not fun. So this will take a while to build a nice thin coat on everything. And I would advise you, if you use this silicone, to make sure that it's well ventilated or you wear a mask. Some of the volatiles out of this silicone will get you a hangover, a headache like you've never had. So if you're working in an enclosed area with no air movement, you're going to know it tomorrow. So either wear a mask or do it where there's lots of fresh air and lots of air movement, and make sure you don't just stand there and breathe the fumes. There are other methods of using silicone like this to make molds that are reusable. You can mix it with something like cornstarch to make a press mold, like more of a rubber stamp mold. There's a lot of different things I've seen, but I've never done that for anything like this. I always just But the thinner you get this first coat, the faster it'll cure. And your concern is really making sure that way down in these deep areas that it's thin, because it's real easy to go over the tops and catch it up later. But if you make these deep areas thick, it'll take forever to cure, and it's really not practical to, the only way they're going to cure is if they got exposure to air, and generally they got to have some humidity in the air. Some silicones require ambient moisture, And so if you, like the pourable silicone that I use, that I like so much, tried doing it inside a couple times because it was winter and it was cold in the studio, thinking it would cure better. It never cured. Well, we heat with a wood stove. There's no ambient humidity in the air by the time the wood stove got done drying everything out, and so the silicone never worked. I thought it was a problem with the silicone. It wasn't. So you got to understand what your product needs in order to work properly. Now I like to work from the top down onto these horizontal vertical surfaces, go from horizontal to vertical and not work up the sides, because if you released it well, it won't work. It'll fall off. And same thing as before, I like to do a feature or a group of features like these central folds that I started. I'll go all the way up to finish them so that everything matches, and try to get as smooth a surface as I possibly can in order to get a really nice mold. I'm going to have to get some, I'll have some foam. I've got collections of odd pieces of rubber foam, closed cell foam, upholstery foam, whatever you need, and we'll trim that all up to shape in order to use that. It's got to be soft enough to not break delicate features, and we'll embed that in the silicone here in later stages. But like I said, if you can make this first coat really thin, you'll put it on and you'll notice there's areas that'll push up. You can just keep walking that forward until everything's all sealed up, and you can thin it up really well. And this is probably the hardest layer to put on. After this, it goes really well. I've never used the white. It may provide a better visual reference of where you are, but I've never used it. This is what Ryan said they used, and they tried other brands and said they were the happiest with this, so this is what I used. But go back over it, and you'll find that the more you do it, the thinner you can get the coat, and several thin coats will cure relatively quickly compared to one thick coat, which isn't what you want. Okay, I just finished up my first tube, just to give you an idea of coverage for that one tube. This probably averages around 1/8 of an inch. It's a lot thinner in some spots, but it's a lot thicker in some. In others, this will cure up to about a 1/4 inch bead, where you normally would put silicone around your bathtub or whatever. But by doing it thinner than that, it cures relatively fast. It can. But see, like down here, this is already dry. And I'm, 40 minutes, 30 minutes into doing this. So, by going really thin, but if I've got one tube, second tube, and then probably 3 more, and then 1 or 2 more to do up the side, could easily have 8 tubes in this. Like I said, that's at $9 a tube. That's 75 bucks in silicone right there. So, but going really thin works well. Don't worry, try to get good coverage. You'll end up having a few spots. Anytime you're doing this and it lifts, it's because your hands need to be lubricated. You need to get your fingers wet with a little bit of soapy water, because as long as they release, your hands will stay clean, especially down here. Have a place to put stuff, have your knife ready for your next tube, have a place to put your silicone. When you get your empty tubes, really get your stage everything really well, so you're ready to go, and then you can just keep going. But you know, at 30 minutes or so for a tube, and as an average, and you know, 6 tubes, 7 tubes, 8 tubes, you know, it's going to be a long day. There's a lot of time to do this, you know, if you could do it all in one day or not, and so just plan accordingly. Also, having this positioned in a way, it'd be probably more comfortable for part of the job if this was higher. But I have to reach way around, and so by having it very relatively low, this is, you know, mid-thigh level, I can easily reach around this side. And by keeping my head upwind of the fumes, you got a small fan running, you probably hear it. I shouldn't get a big headache from doing this, because it'll really give you a smoking headache. So even if you're used to hangovers, this isn't a fun one. One of the places that it's important to not put really thick product on is under deep undercuts, like under his chin, maybe around the head of this dove. What you don't want to do is create a key that'll break when you pull the rubber off the cast plaster. And so we want to make this fairly thin so it's flexible. Then we'll put some foam in there that's also flexible, so it should hold an approximate shape. And because the goal with these models is reference to carbon. I'm not going to cast this image to sell it. I'm going to cast this image to have a durable item to measure, to carve it. And so you can do very nice castings with this, and then patina them so they literally will look like bronze. Ryan had a whole bunch of that stuff. We were trying to figure out how this guy could afford to have all this bronze just sitting around his house. And we found out it was things like shoe polish and whatever else, because he'd cast all these original clay pieces like this. So just something to think about. Work your way across so that you're working far away towards yourself, because if you put this on first and then bump into it while you're doing it, you can corrupt the mold. So, but we're right at the end of the second tube. I don't know if it'll quite do all of him or not for this first coat, but it'll be close. So that gives you an idea on yield. It's really thin, and down at the other end is already starting to cure up, so I shouldn't have to wait forever before I can come back and put a second coat on and start building some thickness. I still don't want to put it on heavy though, because you want to keep it thin in order to keep it well cured. Because in a perfect world, if the silicone wasn't going to tear, you could just do this one mold, this one thin layer, and just let it go at that. But I don't know. I'll go a little bit thicker. A lot of times you can get down to where it'll build into a crevice, and you can just kind of squeeze it and extrude it further, and you can get a nice thin layer and produce an even better register. And because you're advancing that edge, instead of laying a new edge on there, then you can get a little better mold without those lines like I was talking about, those little fissures, and they're not necessarily that noticeable if you do a good job and really work to press them all out and work at a good pace. But your first couple of molds like this, when you start doing it, you'll probably have some lines because of your technique. And so the more you do it, the better you get. Work from your top down. This gives you a little bit of strength to be able to support what you're expressing on that forward edge. Because if you just squirt along here, it's apt to fall off, and you try to pick it up, then you're wearing it, then you're wiping it off and throwing it away, and you're wasting money and wasting time. Your hand doesn't need to be dripping, soaking wet. It just needs to not be dry. And I've done it with just water. Works okay. A little bit of soap makes it even better. And if you work down, if you do run out on your edge, you'll find that you can attach your next squirt to it. It works pretty well. That's 2 tubes, so came out pretty good. So now what we'll do is use this last little squirt and probably will go ahead and do my edge. So I've got this all the way around the side, and then once that's together, I'll know what I'm doing and I can use my rubber up accordingly. This isn't critical. This is more important. So when I'm working, I can have a better result on here, and then this won't really have anything to hold it, so it'll be pretty nice. So that's how you do your first layer of silicone with nothing left on your hand. Okay, it's been about an hour, the magic of video. You can see that with a dry hand, this silicone has gone off really well. It's really dry. The only issue, there's a little bit of water, soapy water left on top. I got to let all that dry, and you can wipe it off if you want, really isn't necessary. But let that dry. I'll come back in a while and put some more silicone on to start building it. Now the mold has already been produced. Whatever I put on top of this is only going to thicken this rubber to make it stronger, because it's going to tend to tear along square edges because it'll be thin, and I don't want it to tear, so I'll go back over it. When I put new silicone, this next layer on, it's going to hook up and grab this old silicone like crazy. It's just going to go. It's not going to be lifting off like it will over here. If my fingers have got a little bit, it'll stick and it'll be all like cobwebs. It'll be a mess. So release your hands well, because going on to this new silicone, this cured silicone, it's a one-way street, boy. It ain't moving. So, but we'll keep working on this, keep building. I probably won't do a ton of video on just layer after layer like I did before, but we'll move on to the next video to show you a little more build, and then how to deal with all the keys and filling it with foam so that we don't have any draft issues to produce the mother, and then we'll just keep moving forward. But I'm going to wrap this video up before it gets too long. Once again, my name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio, showing you how to do a basic silicone mold for working models from clay maquettes. Thanks for coming in.